Hi, my name is Tamara. I'm the current owner of Pythian Castle. This castle was actually built by the Knights of Pythian in 1914 as a facility to care for their elder members and the children of the order. Now, when we came to own it, we did not know it was haunted. We had to find out the hard way. My first ghost experience was here in the castle. And of course, I had to be here by myself. And I heard a voice in the lobby that clearly said, "Hello." Now that's not scary, except for the fact that I was here by myself. It was a female's voice. And shortly thereafter, I actually bumped into a mask in the door of the room you're currently sitting in. It was shortly after that, some other people who worked here for 13 years came by and said, "So, you work here now?" We quickly said, "Yes." And they said, "So, have you met the ghosts?" Having some experiences I couldn't explain, I'm like, maybe. And that's how we came to know of the hauntings of Pythian Castle. This castle has such a rich history and so many people passing through here. Unfortunately, it's not haunted by one person. There are several in here. We've heard a female's voice who claimed she was here with one of the baseball players. We've had several people pass away in here. One which people commonly refer to as Jess. Jeff was the name they thought it was, but he got mad and we call him that. And there was one suicide here by Jess. He corrected us very quickly. We have kind of a grumpy older man that we refer to as Mr. Boots. You may find him a lot in the ballroom or in the tunnel. And some of the kids complained about some of the superintendents around here that they didn't like very much. And they would sometimes take them into different rooms here, and they don't want to go back to them. One cute kid, though, you can find him in the boys' dorm, is Petey. He got in trouble a lot for bouncing a ball around here. Now, we do know of 2 suicides here at Pythian Castle during the Pythian era. One man was suffering from lip and throat cancer, shot himself in the head with a .22 long-range rifle. We suspect that was in the second floor married couple's rooms where he resided. The other gentleman was single. He lived in the basement with the other men. He slit his own neck with a razor. And many folks have seen people here. I've personally seen an elder woman offering me milk. I've seen a military man in army fatigue staring me down. Other people have seen little children, dark figures in the tunnel, a woman in white, a little kid in the bathroom. It's not uncommon to see a figure across the room or right next to you. Another common experience around here is being touched. They may touch your shoulder, they may touch your hair. In some cases, they just make themselves known and you just simply bump into them. And unfortunately, they dissipate really quickly and you can move through it. And some people have felt them just rush right through their bodies. They can feel this energy just pass through them. Because of some of these experiences here, we now offer ghost tours at night, and a guide will guide you through the thing, telling you the history, showing you pictures people have captured, EVPs people have captured, and then maybe see if you have your own experience.
This ghost hunt is an augmented ghost hunt, and there are certain ways that you can augment the ghost hunt, and you can do it by triggers. And there are certain triggers that we've found in the past, like young women, could be a trigger for certain ghosts that are stuck and can't get out but still appreciate the pretty young girl. And here at the Pythian Castle, Tamara, did you have a story about that?
This is built by men. It was operated by the military for 50 years. We know pretty ladies strip energy around here.
They stir up energy around here too. So anyway.
And another way to trigger them too is like the boys and girls weren't supposed to talk to one another. So if boys go into the girls' rooms or the girls go into the boys' room, that can stir up some trouble as well.
Hello, I'm Tom Fowler the third, and I'm Clay Franklin.
And we are putting on your Xtreme ghost hunt tonight. And Clay and I have ghost hunted in the past, and we were lucky enough to visit the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs. Unique in that it is truly haunted, and we have proof of that, in our opinion, that has not been debunked. And that trip was a special trip because we were able to bring our families with us. And we found that having our younger daughters with us triggered the ghost activity. So when we had the opportunity to be part of the Pythian castle, we tried to come up with a trigger to bring out the ghosts. Now down in the Crescent Hotel in Eureka, it's a big limestone, boy, how big is that thing?
Oh, it's I don't know how many rooms they have. I mean, several hundred rooms.
Yes, and it was not always a hotel. Before it was a hotel,
Cancer, wasn't it? Where
Dr. Baker,
Dr.
yeah,
Baker,
Dr.
the cure.
Baker, scumbag. Anyway, he took advantage of people by providing what he called a cure to cancer. As we know, that is not quite here yet, but he milked out a lot of money out of people and gave them false hope. And a lot of the people that died on the premise stuck around and are not real happy about how things went with Dr. Baker. And so we were able to encounter some disembodied voices.
Lots of shadows, constant shadows, constantly, especially later at night, as we had actually ended most of our official ghost hunts. All night long there were, I would wake up. It's not too easy to sleep, easily awakened, but numerous times with shadows. And every time I would see a shadow, of course, I would jump up and try to look and say, okay, how did that occur? And see, is it a shadow from light from the outside? And every time it was next to impossible to try to show where it was coming from.
And that's something about ghost hunting in any science. This is not really a science, it's a quasi-science. There's no scientific proof, they say, of the happenings of ghosts and the supernatural, and they also say the same thing about religion, but those of us that believe understand that there's a different realm and there are powers that exist, and there are likely dimensions that we cannot see, and when you're a ghost hunter, you have certain tools that you use to try and bridge those gaps, so to speak, between what we can see and hear as human beings and what our electronics can record nowadays.
And I think the curiosity is just that. I mean, we've seen numerous television shows that have come about. We've seen new equipment that comes out yearly on different electronic devices to try to understand where the energy is coming from. And I think from a scientific standpoint, we've been giving pieces of information that are unexplained normally, at least to us at this point. And I love the fact that we understand that energy can not be destroyed or created. So energy passes. So where the energy is, where it goes, whatnot, may let us know a little bit about our own mortality. And hopefully this, when ghost hunting it's become so popular, and it's because I do believe we do have the right type of experimentation, and we have a lot of people in the field. A lot of people are just getting into it for maybe the right or wrong reasons. That's hard to say depending upon which ghost hunter show you want to see. But I do believe that the technology is now to the point where we can open some doors and see things a little differently. But a word of caution with that, a word of caution. There are things that we don't know about, and there's things, and I say we as in all human beings and ghost hunters included. There's good and bad in the world. We've known that. There's good and evil. And when we start looking at perhaps, Casper, your friendly ghost, may not be Casper. It could possibly be an evil entity that may never have been human.
All right, great. You're right. But let's talk about the trigger. All right, so back
exactly.
to bring these manifestations about. We found that at the Crescent Hotel, having our teenage daughters with us
Right.
caused a certain apparition to appear. His name was Michael.
Michael, right, correct.
Yeah, Michael was a worker that was helping to build the facility at the time back in the 1800s, and Michael was an Irishman that really liked the ladies, the young ladies, and he was a young man.
That came to his demise.
And yeah, he was on the third floor or fourth floor. And he decided that he was going to show off for the girls that were walking by, and so he swung around the scaffolding and made a fatal mistake, and he fell to his death in
And that place is what, room?
yeah, the
218, I believe
room
it is.
that he fell down into is believed to be haunted. It's rented year round by ghost hunters, and we were able to, I think, because the girls were there, to entice him to show himself. And we were lucky enough to be joined by a guy who referred to himself as Cerebus. Odd deal, but he caught, at the time we were in the hallway, an apparition that matched up with the
Known photographs of what he looked
Michael.
like. Oh,
Yeah.
Michael, right, yeah.
yeah, and we also were able to. That photo's never been debunked, and we sent it to a lot of the paranormal investigators around the country, and to this day, no one's debunked it. Now, we did catch a rather large orb with an eye in it that was in front of the door, and that one could be a speck of dust. And
Yeah, I'm not
so
sure about
we're not positive about that one, but we had a great time, and it was a good deal, and to be able to do this in the Pythian Castle, unbelievably cool.
Exactly. And I think you see some of the same elements in the Pythian Castle, knowing the history of the Pythian Castle, the things that have occurred there, and the fact that I think Tamara had mentioned it, the limestone, or maybe you had mentioned the way the structure's built, just really sets itself up for paranormal activity. Walking into the place, you will feel something. There is, without a doubt, you will feel something, whether you consider that good or bad or whatnot. You will feel it. So this is a new adventure, and we've worked it where we can come in, make some recordings, and allow friends as well to join in on the experience.
Well, let's tell them a little bit about the history
You wanna do
of
this?
the
Okay.
Pythian Castle. The Pythian Castle was, as Tamara said, built by the Knights Pythias, which, coming out of World War I, they had a lot of widows of the soldiers from the war and the orphans of the war, and the Knights built this to house them. During the 26 years that they occupied the Pythian Castle, there were 104 recorded deaths. Now, there were children that died, there were 2 suicides that were documented, and a number of elderly passed on. And so there are spirits in this building, and it's our job to record them and try and capture them with our electronic devices. And also, Clay and I believe that triggers are very important. So the Xtreme Ghost Hunt is an opportunity to try and entice the spirits to come to us. And we do that through performance art with this Xtreme Ghost Hunt. And so during the next phase of the history of the Pythian Castle, World War II broke out, and Evangel's campus was a medical hospital for the military. They brought soldiers in that were hurt, injured, wounded from all over, at both theaters, in Europe and from Pacific, and they healed at the facility in Springfield, Missouri. The Pythian Castle has a basement, and uniquely, during World War II, there were wounded enemy Italian, German,
Japanese.
Japanese, the Axis, those officers, high-ranking officers, were brought back to Springfield to heal, and they kept them in cells in the basement of the Pythian Castle. Now, if you know the history of World War II and RGIs, and Clay and I are blessed to be old enough that we've known men that have fought over there, we've known the children of the men that fought over there, we've heard the stories, and the Japanese were brutal to our men. The Japanese looked at us as demons. So when we came and fought in the Pacific, they would not surrender. They would fight to the death, and if they caught one of us, they would torture us. The Bataan Death March. I mean, it just goes on. Study it. The hatred between RGIs and the Japanese is unlike anything. It was a passion because of the brutality. And there were Japanese officers in the basement of the Pythian Castle.
That's correct.
And I tell you what, those men got payback. I promise you, RGIs, when they got the opportunity, there was payback.
That's right. I believe that.
In addition, the officers of the German army were the SS. The Germans, their rank and file, basically were like us, and they were there to fight, and they were defending their homeland. But the officer corps, the SS, were brutal. Concentration camps, all that, it's true. There's no doubt that those men facilitated genocide. Those same officers would kill their own men for not obeying orders. Those same officers would not surrender. They would surrender, and in their hair they would have metal wires, and they would wrap those around their captors and try and kill them. You had to be on your guard all the time around SS because they would try and kill you.
So bring us into the trigger objects that we're going to
All right.
use in the cells.
So Clay and I were out looking at spirit for Halloween stuff, as we always do every year, and we bump into Dr. Baculus. Dr. Baculus is a rare individual in that he is a procurer of freak shows, and
he's one of the few sideshow acts that's in this region, and to stumble upon him was fortuitous. I mean, it couldn't. I guess it happened for a reason. Because we were just thinking as to go through Pythian Castle as an enjoyable ghost house or something along this line.
Something.
But then when he showed us some of his trade, we realized at that point, because of the bazaar, if we put that in the dungeon, in the area, the holding areas, we could probably simulate some of what may have happened during that time period.
Triggers. That's what we're talking about.
Triggers.
We're trying to trigger it so that your equipment and you can see what we've seen, and you will be a believer. So while you're in the basement of the Pythian, understand that it does have a rich history, and understand that some beings don't cross over. Some don't. And you have the opportunity to capture them on video or on audio.
Electro EVPs.
And we wish you the best of luck in your hunt. And by the way, the tunnel that went out to the boiler house, the tunnel is this long room, and back when the orphans were housed at the Pythian Castle, there was a certain caretaker that legend has it would take young kids through the tunnel and do unspeakable things to those children. And to this day, Legend has it that that caretaker still haunts
The boiler.
the boiler room and the tunnel.
No.
We wish you the best of luck in the boiler room.
Ghost hunting equipment 101. We've got several pieces of equipment that we are going to have our friends use in this ghost hunt. And I think we want to go through and explain each piece. And as I go through it, I'm sure Tom will chime in and try to help a little bit as we're talking. Each one has a unique capabilities. So let's start with the basics. These are divining rods, dowsing rods, divining rods, however you want to call them. Basically, all they are is copper rods. They're used to look for water, and they cross. And believe it or not, these were probably one of the first ghost detecting pieces of equipment that are out there. And what we do is you can ask questions, and if it's positive or negative, of course I'm moving around there, so they move quite easily, but they'll be stationary, and if you ask a question, they will simply cross. And I'm doing that. So they'll cross, and if you're really still, you'll see, and you can get answers yes and no. You can have, now I did not, that was kind of strange. I didn't really uncross those, but anyway, they're really, now it's going wide. Now I don't know. Anyway, okay, so one of the things about these rods is if you ask a spirit to help you identify where they are, that's one thing. I know, I've got a personal friend who has had such success that her and her kids, they play games in their home where they will hide an object. It's all started with, we can't find our car keys, we can't find this, and they would call for the spirit to help them. Now where it began was they were actually using this to maybe find water outlets and things on a property that they own. This is up in Canada, where they were trying to find the corners of where the property was, and they asked this spirit who they felt had been around to help them, and they found all four corners exactly marked out where the property was. So to make a long story short, once they got to know this spirit, they used to play games where somebody would run around with the divining rods and somebody would hide something, and they never failed to find things, playing hide and go seek with this. So I had to buy some. I've already experienced a few things with it. Very sensitive to movement, but in the right hands, I think it would be an excellent adventure and something to see what happens with them. Okay. Next piece of equipment that I'd like to talk about is electromagnetic field meters. Entities, spirits, have known they can put off their own energy. This is how they can control electrical devices. This is how they can control the lights. There's a lot of different things that they can work or manifest with energy. And one of the things is their electromagnetic field. Now, these are some basic ghost meters, and these range from a Mel meter to just these basic meters to pick things up. And what you simply do is you press, and when there's no electrical activity or nothing happening, you're not going to see anything. And the Pythian castle that we're going to explore, it doesn't have a lot of outlets. So I'm not expecting much in the way of external electricity, like you'd go up to a wall socket or something. It might go off then because there is electromagnetic activity occurring there. But this place, they're few and far between. All right. Okay, so simply to use these, and these are very basic, you just push the button, let it settle down, and then you can go around to different areas. If you do feel the presence of a spirit, which you can do, most people physiologically can feel it. It's just an unusual sensation. Perhaps the hairs on your arm begin to stand up, a cool sensation, cold spots, things along this nature. You can ask them to wave in front of this, get close to this meter, and if it goes off, then you know you're in the presence of something that is at least supernatural, or paranormal, we should say. Really simple to use. But you can walk around with this. They're lightweight and they run on batteries, as long as the batteries don't get drained from the spirits. All right, next piece of equipment that we're going to have with us, we'll have several people that will be holding digital tape recorders. Spirits have an ability to, again, as I'd mentioned previously with the EMF meters, to manipulate electronic devices. One of which is the ability to produce sound at a level that we're unable to hear, but they can produce it on a digital recorder. These are called EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena. And when this occurs, you have to play it back. Normally it occurs to a question, especially if it's a smart and, or an intelligent spirit. But you may ask a name, you can ask pretty much anything you want to, and they will come back with a very, a lot of times it's a whispery type voice, depends upon the strength of the spirit. But you know, we're going to try tonight to use trigger objects to try to elicit a greater chance of getting electronic voice phenomena, or an EVP. And we go to spirit box. Okay, spirit boxes. There we have two different types of spirit boxes. Okay, these were invented, 2006, 2007. The first one that came out was called the SB7, PSB7, and this is the one you'll probably see quite a bit on the Ghost Hunters shows. And basically, it runs, and you run it through a speaker. It's going to go back and forth from an AM or an FM channels, jumping from channel to channel very quickly. In fact, we're going to set these to probably about 250 milliseconds per channel, which is almost instantaneous. And spirits are able to draw from electro activity, or from the FM signals, or actually an AM signal, a way to manifest a voice, a sound. And if you're curious about this when you go home tonight, pull it up on YouTube to see what people sit down for hours and hours and have conversations with spirits. It's a little strange. I'm just going to warn you. And the voices you hear are really strange. An interesting fact that was pointed out that I just learned was you can bring entities in that may not be haunting where you are. For instance, you can be in your own home and pick up on entities. When you watch these videos, you'll see what I'm talking about. They leave, they come. It's like they're coming for a visit. They'll come in, they'll say a few words. If they like you, they'll come back. And again, they're not haunting the house. Most of the places that they're doing this, they're in their own home. They go, yeah, we have no spirit activity whatsoever. There's nothing paranormal. You know, I'll get on this, and it's just an avenue, or a way for them to connect. Now, we hope that we get some more activity with this, along with the EVPs, to our trigger objects. So during the hunt, we may ask this. We may ask that we do quiet EVPs. We'll have several people ask a question. We'll wait. I don't know which recorder you may get a response to, or who, or when, or where. But then we'll do a second EVP where we will run a spirit box, either that or the PSB11, which is a more advanced version of the PSB7. Both work very similar. They use AM/FM waves scanning back and forth across the frequency so fast that you're not going to really pick up much. You may pick up a glimpse every once in a while of a radio station. You go, oh, that was something like that. But for the most part, it's going too fast. But what we'll do is we'll do a spirit box session. We'll wait. We'll ask some questions. There'll be some things on here. We may not be able to pick it up as soon as we hear it. That's why we want you to go back with your recorders, and we'll re-listen to it and see if we can pick out what was said. Okay, the next pieces of equipment are going to be our videos. We will have several night vision cameras that we're going to use. They will be probably lit up. Most of them have their own infrared lighting system. This will have this one's got more than one, so it's going to be a little bit more powerful. And the reason we do that is because you have to have a camera that's capable of picking up those light rays. And a lot of times the individual IR is good for just a short distance. If you can have an additional light source of infrared light, you'll be able to get much further on your video. So hopefully, when we use this, we will catch things moving across a room, shadows, masses, things along those lines. To help enhance that, we've got several laser grids that if we turn on, I'll point down, I don't know that you can see that, but we'll have laser grids, and in dark, these things will light up. Now, if the grids break or you see any configuration that does not meet with the way this grid is pointing out, something has to break the grid. And if we're all stationary and there's no one else in the room, we'll know that there was something that was paranormal or at least has mass or whatnot. With that, we have another lighting source. We'll have a handheld grid. And lastly, whenever an entity comes into a room or is close by, they need energy to manifest themselves, to perform, to do things that we would be able to, for us to see, for them to help us with the spirit box, or for an EVP or for an EMF. This is a temperature thermometer that measures in distance. So pressing the button here, we can get a quick temperature, but if I hold the button down, I can see what it is over across the room. If I'm pointing it here, it's dropped 4 or 5 degrees because the windows are colder. All right, and then I can take it off, my finger off the button, you know. And in the meantime, if someone were to say, for instance, if Tom, who's videoing me at the time, if he says, Clay, I feel a cold spot, I'd say, okay. I'd get a quick reading, and then I'd point towards him, and I'd say, wow. And sometimes the temperature can drop down 10 or 15 degrees, which we find quite amazing. Would not happen otherwise. And of course, you always check for drafts. You always check for, is there any other reason that would cause the temperature to change? So someone will be able to check temperature, and we will basically divide out the equipment and go step by step, and we will begin our ghost hunt.
Friends, I hope you enjoyed our explanation of the Pythian Castle and our ghost hunting equipment. Thank you, Dr. Frankenstein, for explaining
Absolutely.
it to them. Please understand that we are guests at the Pythian Castle. Please understand that this is really a ghost hunt. We take this seriously. This equipment is real. It costs money. We need to be respectful of it, our host, and the ghost. So as you go through, please try and be quiet so that we can distinguish the ghosts from the noise that we put off. So we want you to enjoy it, and hopefully this is an experience that will last a lifetime. Dr. Frankenstein?
Hey, let's do the ghost hunt.
All right. Have fun.
We hope you make it through your tour.